Peace VC, Tony here. Tony's LPs are us. We're in Studio E. As you can see, the Elvis light is on. Put up some new things in the background if you're interested. We have a VHS portrait of an album. It's Quincy Jones. That's LA is My Lady album. Then we have a Robert Davi Sings Sinatra autographed cover of his CD. Now, Robert Davi was the villain in a James Bond film, and just an excellent villain, friends with Sinatra. He's a great singer. We saw him in New York. Me and a pal of mine, another Bond guy, we went to Feinstein's downstairs, I believe. It was a little club, really cool, old school. And Davi did a whole American songbook. And he just loves Frank. He was with Frank in a film. Not sure at the film, but early in his career, he was in a film with Frank, and Frank took a liking to him. And then we have O.C. Smith, Reel to Reel, Stereo Columbia, just some new stuff. But I'm doing this video today in September. Last month, it was kind of a birthday for this guy, WILLY DEVILLE, MINK DEVILLE. And I'm going to do a little tribute to him, show some of his records, talk about him. He's a kind of a forgotten American treasure, American poet. A poet that was kind of tortured. He tortured himself. He was a real artist, is from what I gather from watching, some documentaries about him and what people say about him. He was a suffering poet. He didn't really do it, make it commercially. He sold millions of records, but some things that happened in his life, had to sell his property. He had a horse farm, a horse plantation, had to sell that to pay taxes. Never had the right management. Capitol Records didn't know what to do with him. They actually recorded a record. They called him up right before Christmas and said, Mink or Willie, whatever they used, we're not going to release the record. He goes, why not? He goes, well, we can't figure out how to promote you, what to do with you. Your sound is not in the box. It's not, what mainstream is today. He goes, well, isn't that good? He goes, isn't that what we want? Isn't that something that we want? We don't want every, but Capitol didn't release it. Later on, it went over. They released it overseas. It was a hit. I believe it's this record, Le Chat Bleu. I believe this record ended up coming back to us on Capitol, but overseas it was a big hit in the European continent. So we're going to talk about WILLY DEVILLE, MINK DEVILLE. I have some notes. I may look down once in a while. But WILLY DEVILLE's band, MINK DEVILLE, was the house band at CBGB's back when CBGB's was in its infancy stage, I guess in the 70s, 74, 75. And one of the AR people that was a agent to go look for, for new talent was there to see the Robert Gordon band. And I love Robert Gordon. I talked about Robert Gordon. I think I did, but I should have, and I will talk about him. I met Robert Gordon a few times, saw him very up close, saw him at BB King's, and I wanted him to autograph some records. And he actually took me in his dressing room. I met his wife, and unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. And if you don't know Robert Gordon, check out Robert Gordon. But the AR guy went to see Robert Gordon, and the band before Robert Gordon was at CBGB's was WILLY DEVILLE's band, MINK DEVILLE at the time. And he goes, look, Robert Gordon's great, but there's this guy, MINK DEVILLE, that we should really go and investigate. We should sign him. And Capitol went over, and they ended up signing him. And, you can look it all up on Wikipedia. There's a bunch of stuff on him. A lot of his videos are on YouTube. I never had the chance to see him. I wish I had. He's one of my favorite artists for years now, for 40 years or more, over 40 years. He was born William Paul Borsey. He was Pequot Indian, American Indian, and he was Irish. So he had those roots, but he went around as if he was a French Latin lover. He appears to be French, most of his album titles have a flair, have a savoir-faire to them, a French thing. So most people didn't even know he was American. He was born in Stamford, Connecticut on 8/25/1950. That's why last month I said there was kind of an anniversary. He also died in August 6th, 2009, only at the age of 58. Unfortunately, he had cancer, and he released a record right before he passed away. I do not have that record. I'm going to search it out. But he was a blues man. He didn't sing like he sounded. If you hear him speak, it's not that voice. It's like a different voice. He was charismatic. He was flamboyant. He was posh. He was just an actor up on stage. He would act out each song was acting out. He had so many fans. Southside Johnny, Little Steven went to see him in Asbury, probably at the Stone Pony. I'm sure Bruce was a fan. Benny King was a friend of his. Tom Petty loved him. Tom Waits loved him. Sting loved him. Mark Knopfler and him collaborated on an album called Miracle, and together they submitted a Storybook Love Song, which was in the theme song for Carl Reiner's A Princess Bride, I believe 1987. A Storybook song was nominated for an Oscar. Willie actually performed it at the Oscars that night. They didn't win. I believe Dirty Dancing won out for the best song. And for me, there's no comparison. Storybook Love Song or Storybook Love Story, that song gives me shivers. It gives me chills. When I had a video business, I would actually use that song with the couple's permission, and I had them say, look, you're telling me to use this song because I did not have the rights to that song. And that song I did over a montage. It's just perfect. And Storybook Love Song is one of the most poignant songs of all time. And Mark Knopfler plays the guitar. He's on that entire album, which I'll show you. But Willie says that, or William Paul Boise, most people don't know that's his name, said that he was inspired early on by the Drifters. He listened to the Drifters, he listened to doo-wop, he listened to a lot of the soul doo-wop bands, or bands that had that New York flair to them. He was from Connecticut. He ended up living in New York. He lived all over the world, but you could look all that up. I don't really know the chronological order of that, but he said that the Drifters, that music, and if you hear his songs, his writing, and he wrote most of his songs. He even wrote with Doc Pomus, who wrote great hits for rock and roll, Elvis, and all down the line. And Doc was a big fan of him. I guess Doc lived in New York when he lived in New York. So he said that the Drifters would hypnotize him. That sound would hypnotize him. He was just so blown away by that. He was also blown away by John Hammond's album, which was called So Many Roads, a 1965 blues LP that is just fantastic. John Hammond, of course, father was a A&R record guy for Columbia. I believe he signed, I should know this, but I believe he signed Dylan and maybe Billie Holiday. He went that far back. But he was a blues guy. He's still alive today. He's in his 80s. And if you check him out on YouTube, John Hammond, you would think that this guy is a black guy from Delta, Mississippi. He said that he never got into the color thing. He goes, music is music. I don't look at it as I'm a white guy singing the blues. But this guy could play the blues. He's been doing it for 60 years or so now. He's 80-something. But the album that blew Willie away was that record, So Many Roads, and 1965. I believe it may be on Verve. He later went on Rounder, a couple of those places, but I'm going to take this off. But anyway, Hendrix was also a fan of John Hammond. And John Hammond heard in the Village that there's this black dude playing your whole record. He's actually performing your record in maybe Club Wa down in the Village, and John Hammond went to meet him, and he was playing his songs from Too Many Roads, that blues thing. So Hendrix was inspired by him. Willie was inspired by him. So that's just a little thing that, we trace music we love through. We go back. I tell stories where I would listen to the Rolling Stones and I would back all the way to, Mississippi Delta. Same with Zeppelin. You go back to Robert Johnson. Stones, you go back to Robert Johnson. And Willie could play slide. He could play blues. He could do doo-wop. He could do pop. He does Cajuns, French Cajun, Americana. Like I said, Tom Petty was a big fan. So I'm going to go into some of his records, but just to give you a feel of what he sounds like, I can't play any music here, but he's got that Benny King 70s, 60s, or 50s, 60s vibe. He sounds a lot like some of the Southside Johnny tunes were written with Little Steven. Just love songs. And, if you know Anna and Misery by the Beatles did those covers, that's the vibe you get from his stuff. It's just tremendous. And why he never caught on, as far as I know, in the States, it's a mystery to me, because you don't see anything about him on YouTube. There's a Facebook page, I believe, but he was a cool guy. He would say you listen with your eyes as well as your ears. He was a philosopher. He was a cool guy. I always thought he named himself after Cadillac, DeVille, but I remember reading that it was based on something else. But he was a big Cadillac fan. He had a Fleetwood that he's interviewed in, and he talks about the '59 with the Finns in the '60s, and I could relate to that. But he was a tormented poet. He was never given his just desserts, as far as I know. A lot of his managers were not the right people for him. He did get lucky early on. Jack Nitsky produced him. He worked with Phil Spector, Wall of Sound, and they called Jack up and they said, we would like you to produce this new artist we have. And he goes, I'm not doing any more artists. I'm doing soundtracks. And he goes, well, come on. So Willie had a demo, and the first song on it was These Arms of Mine by Otis Redding. And Willie said, on my demo, I want that as the first track. That was the only cover. The rest of them were, I guess, songs that he wrote. This is early on. And Jack actually went to probably a place in New York, maybe, I'm trying to think of the studio. There were so many back then, but he went into a New York studio with the Capitol people, and he heard the first few choruses of These Arms of Mine, and he goes, I'll do it. So he actually got involved, but still, Capitol didn't know what to do with him, like I said before. Tom Waits is a fan, like I said. Dylan was a friend of his, and Dylan said, maybe after he passed away, he goes, this dude should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I don't know why he isn't. So that was coming from Dylan, and that's pretty high praise. Dylan's not into the commercialized, Hall of Fame stuff. So for him to say that came from Dylan's, deep inside Dylan's heart, But he was an American original. He was a romantic. His music touches your soul. When you hear his music, it touches your soul. And, I just hope that people watch this video. I hope that people watch this video and understand that you need to start looking for his stuff. They're available, of course, on eBay and whatever, Discogs. I don't really do Discogs, but he's an artist that it's just timeless. Like, I put his records on, and sometimes you just get the chills. Sometimes you sit back and say, man, what are you doing here? What are you doing how did you get into this stereo, and why did you leave us so young? Well, he unfortunately got sick. He was a big smoker. You would see him smoking on stage. There was some great lighting effects in stage. Luckily, there's a lot of videos of him. It does. I don't think it would give you the impact of seeing him live, but you know, you get the idea. His voice can make you cry. He was just you know, I don't use the word genius, but he was so theatrical and flamboyant. And the guy was from Connecticut, but you would think he's European or Cajun French or France, you know, from the Eiffel Tower. But I've got these records. They may be in order somewhat. This is MINK DEVILLE. This is Cabretta. And this has on it, you may know, Little Girl, Mixed Up, Shook Up Girl, Spanish Stroll, and Cadillac Walk. Now, when you hear these songs, they almost sound like they're traditional, classical, rock and roll songs. But these are from WILLY DEVILLE. It's the 70s. This was 77 on Capitol. So here's the band. A lot of these have original inners. Let me see if this one does with lyrics. This one does not. This is a repress on Capitol, Orange Capitol. Next up, we're going to show La Chatte Bleue. Here's another French. You know, you see the French aspect of it, Purple Capitol. This is a fantastic record. Let me see here, just to give you an idea of what this dude looks like, man. He is savoir-faire. He is cool. He is the cool cat. And Willie wasn't his real name, but we all know him as Willie. Now, this still has a shrink on it, so it's hard to read. But let me see. I'll go off the record label. Let me see here. Lipstick Traces, Heaven Stood Still, which is the name of a documentary that was released this year, I believe, or late 23. Really recommend it. Just to Walk That Little Girl Home. Some of these songs are done on different records for whatever reason. Maybe some were originally in Europe and they came back here. This Must Be the Night. The World Outside, and Savoir Faire. But I can't say enough of what this guy does to you. If you like Benny King, and if you like some of the early Springsteen type of, like a Jersey Girl feel to it, Benny King, Gary U.S. Bonds, it's that rock and roll 50s, but it goes into like the mid 70s when like Bruce and Little Steven produced Gary U.S. Bonds. A lot of that New York flavor, a lot of that Spanish Harlem flavor. Willie loved to go into Spanish Harlem. He loved to go into New York, would live in New York, work the streets. He used to see Dylan. He used to see Hendrix there in the 60s. An amendment here. Here's Savoir Faire, WILLY DEVILLE. And this has This Must Be the Night, Spanish Stroll, Cadillac Walk, Just to Walk That Little Girl Home. This is kind of a compilation. So if you don't have anything, pick this up. This is, I believe this came out in 81. So kind of early in his career. Coup de Grace, another French title. If you can see, this dude is from Connecticut. He's Indian, American Indian, the Pequot. His grandmother was Pequot. I guess his mother was, his maternal grandmother, and his father was Irish. So this has Just Give Me One Good Reason. Teardrops Must Fall, You Better Move On, which is the Alexander song. The Beatles covered him. Love and Emotion, Love Me Like We Did Before, She Was Made in Heaven. It's like Heaven Must Be Missing an Angel type of thing. Like, just so good, so good. Now, like I said, I hope this is on Atlantic. I just hope people get to see this video. Now, I watched one of those stupid videos where, you know, where this guy comes on, he's got 100,000 subs, 3 million views in the first hour, and he tells you what's the best time to lay a video down, post a video on YouTube for the most views. So I'm going to post this around 11 o'clock, 11:30 today, and we'll see if that's the time he says. Now, why? I don't know. People watching him at work, or people not working, but, you know, I got sucked into it. I watched it, and we'll see. I just hope people watch this video. Here's another one, Return to Magenta. Another album there with the band. Here's his band. He had a few bands. He later went solo. I don't have half his albums. I stopped buying his albums in the 80s, and then when he switched over to just WILLY DEVILLE, I didn't really buy albums. I wasn't really buying a lot of records at the time. But that's another Purple Capital. And on here we have Rolene, A-Train Lady, just all has that vibe. Some of it is blues, some of it's slide. When you see him live, he plays slide guitar like a blues man, you know. Here's the album that is called Miracle, and this is the album that Storybook Love is on, and this is with Mark Knopfler. I don't know if Mark produced the record or not, but here's the inner. And this is a actual promo, so I may have got this from my record store. But this has Storybook Love, and if you don't know Princess Bride, you may know Princess Bride. You may not know who did the theme song, and that was Carl Reiner said definitely, or Bob Reiner. Bob Reiner said definitely we're going to use that song, and it was nominated. And this is on A&M. Might be his only record on A&M. I'm not sure. The funny thing is, the hype sticker on here, the promo hype sticker, doesn't have Storybook Love on it. So what do they know? Like I said, Capitol didn't even know what to do with him. They shelved the record. And when you shelve a record, it may never be on. They own the record, I guess, and they shelved it. And somebody who knew, who was smart, said, we're going to put this record out in Europe. When it came over to the States, or maybe the import, Rolling Stone, who that mattered at that point, said, this is one of the top 3 or 5 best albums released this year. So next is Where Angels Tread to Fear. Fear to Tread. This has on it Love's Got a Hold on Me, Are You Lonely Tonight, Lily's Daddy's Cadillac, River of Tears, all written by Willie. I know he wrote a few with Doc Pomus. I'm not sure if they're on here or not, but another original inner. Great shot there. Like I said, very, very cinematic. Some of his records are like stories. Whoever his photographer was always captured him in a cool pose. There you have it. Here's the inner. This is Where Angels Fear to Tread. This is 1983. Another one is I Must Be Dreaming. And this is with Jerry Sheff, and Ronnie Tutt, who toured with Elvis's touring band. They're both deceased now. So is Mink, obviously. And he loved his Italian shoes. There you have it. Leopard. And here you have a zebra female version. And so I believe this is with Jim Horn is playing sax. I'm thinking this is the one with Ronnie Tutt. Guitar. Well, it could be another record, but he does have Ronnie Tutt on one of his albums, and Jerry Schiff. But doesn't matter. It's just great stuff. I'll go back and check that out for you guys in a minute. Let me see here. This is actually from, this was recorded at Muscle Shows sound. And this is a 45 RPM maxi single that I picked up. I have a few, but I couldn't really locate them. This has Harlem Nocturne, Maybe, Tomorrow live versions. This is a beautiful sounding record because it's actually a 45 RPM. But let me just check if in a minute, and I will let you know the record I'm thinking of here. With some downtime, I'll let you look at a record in a minute. This is the record. Sorry about that. Ron Tutt, Jerry Sheaf, vocal to Jake of the Family Jewels, background, Willie DeVille lead guitar, accordion. Yes, he uses accordion like Southside and Little Steven and Benny King and even Dylan, even the band. So Ronnie Tutt and Jerry around here. Jerry's the bass player, Ronnie Tutt's the drum. So he got the Elvis's rhythm section, which was a cool thing to do. And that's it. I just want you to realize that there's artists that you don't hear about anymore that are outstanding. It's just go to YouTube, check out his records. Like I said, that one is a compilation. I believe it has all that vibe that Gary U.S. Bonds, the early 60s, that wall of sound, rock and roll, when so many artists were delivering beautiful, beautiful songs. So keep him in mind. Mink DeVille, Willie DeVille, keep him in your prayers. He's just a magnificent artist, and I'm going to go out now and start looking on the internet, trying to get some other records. I believe he has a live album out, and I think there's a few records with Dr. John. Has that Cajun New Orleans sound. He has a New Orleans. I believe he lived in New Orleans. He was married 3 times. He had some tragedies in his family. Not sure if he has children, but I think he may have children. But just an amazing dude, man, an amazing guy, and that's him right there in action. And I believe this has most of his songs on it, so this might be a compilation. This is 81, I believe. So keep rocking. Thanks a lot. Hope you enjoy this segment. That's about it. We're going to sign out, and I'm going to post this record when they tell me to post it, and maybe you guys will watch it. Maybe we'll get 1,000 views. I don't see why not. This guy's worth 1 million views. If you don't know about him, spread the word. Share this video. I want to thank all the subs, all the people who comment, all the people who send me. I got this t-shirt from one of my buddies who's a viewer. I love it. Stacks. This is this is a logo that is just, you see it, you know exactly what it is. All the, it's on Shaft, it's on all those great Isaac Hayes records, all that great stuff from down south. So thanks a lot. Please, if you haven't subbed, please do so. But most of all, I hope you get to listen to some Willie DeVille if you don't know about him. Take care. Stay safe. Ciao.